one-on-one meetings in the staff room.
Welcome everyone to the fourth and final weekly training for treatment nurses and admin nurses. We will have completed the entire orientation checklist at the end of today's
I've been
session.
not that far, but yeah.
Yeah, go back.
Muting is such a fun thing. Okay, so our last session today is on mainly nutrition that has to do with wound healing, risk, all that kind of stuff. And for that, we have Penny Walker, our corporate dietitian, on. And we're going to talk about a few different things than we normally talk about. But one thing that comes up a lot, especially with new nurses to our organization, especially treatment nurses, is do we have a protocol for if somebody gets a wound, do we put them for sure on this set of supplements and this protein and all that? So Penny's going to go over that a little bit and the why and why not we might do certain things when people have wounds. This is the final section on your orientation sheet, and it should be on the third page midway down, and it'll what you will initial when we're through with this, and it's just called nutrition and hydration. And at the end, after Penny gets through talking, I'll show you again where to find it in case you don't have it already printed out. But everyone who's been through these sessions needs to make your initials are on every section, as well as your supervisors. And then if somebody missed a session, of course, they're recorded and we'll be sending all the links. We've been sending them as we go, but that will also count. If somebody watches the recording, then you initial and your orientation will be complete. Again, this is going to be pretty informal today, so please put a question in the chat if you have one, because Penny's very interactional. She likes to get feedback, not just talk to a blinking light up here. So with that, Penny, I will turn it over to you to talk about our nutrition and hydration kind of policies and our philosophy here at Nexion related to skin.
Sorry, had to mute my phone. So, okay, as Carrie said, we talked a lot about not only what we cover normally when we do the wound training for DONs, but I also wanted to add some things that I think will help tighten the system, et cetera. So we're going to do a little basic nutrition, but then we're going to give you some pieces to look at of what happens in your facility so that we know that the skin system is tight. So the first thing we're going to talk about is hydration. Now, hydration is really important for multiple reasons. Number one, how do you think we get all of that good nutrition and all of the oxygen, et cetera, to that wound area to heal it? The answer is it goes through the bloodstream. And if someone's dehydrated, you have less circulation. And so therefore you have less of those good nutrients that you're pushing in there that actually get to the wound, okay? The next thing is, think about the skin actually when you are dehydrated. What's it like? Okay, you already have thin skin, it's papery, but now it doesn't have the elasticity that even elderly skin has. So therefore, it's more likely to tear, it's more likely to be break down, etc. So that's another important thing. If any of you have ever been dehydrated, then that gets us to the third thing that really is important in hydration, and that is how much do you move? If you're dehydrated, you're very lethargic, you're fatigued, you don't feel good, so you lay around, okay? Well, what's that going to do to the amount of pressure that you're going to cause to certain areas of the body? So basically, you've added another dimension of why you're not healing, because that resident is more likely to stay in one position, not move around, not want to be out of bed, etc., because they feel very lethargic, okay? So most people will tell you that virtually everybody in the nursing home is a hydration risk, and that's pretty true. However, we really need to narrow it down and talk about the people that are at high risk. So the very first thing that you need to know about whether somebody's going to be hydrated or not is, what do you think? Anybody got a guess? Can they self-hydrate? If they can self-hydrate, then you cite a fighting chance. There's a water pitcher. There are other ways for them to get drinks if they walk and they talk, etc., or even walk. They can get their fluids, etc. So the people that can hydrate themselves are at a lot less risk than those people who cannot hydrate themselves. Keep in mind also that whether they can hydrate themselves not only depends on the physical, it depends on the mental capacity. So for example, if you hand a confused person a glass of water and it's clear and they can see what it is, if they're thirsty, they're likely to take a drink. But if you put that water in this pink thermos-like thing and you set it in the bed, next to the bed, does that, sorry, I thought I muted that. Does that tell you, does that person know that that is their water source? Okay. Can they move it toward them? If you set it a little ways away, can they move it toward them? Is somebody at meal times on a sippy cup and then you get them in the room and they have a regular pitcher? Well, it stands to reason if you need a sippy cup or you need a Provail cup or some kind of assistive device to get hydrated at meals, guess what? You also need it between meals. So those are good things to look for when you're wondering whether somebody can actually self-hydrate. Okay, the next thing is, do they drink water? Okay, I can see your little faces. How many of you will drink water if you do not add lemon or flavor packets, etc.? How many? 1, 2, 3. Yeah. 4. Okay. The object is, yeah, right. So what do we hydrate with? Water is actually the best thing. But if someone doesn't like water, you're not going to get very far with putting a water pitcher in the room, okay? So that's another important factor to think about being hydrated, making sure that they drink water. The next thing is, let's look at weight. Water is heavy, so therefore, a lot of times when you do a weight and you have a big change, 3 to 5 pounds, you go, oh, there's no way somebody can lose that amount of weight. A pound of fat's like 3,500 calories. So if you've ever tried to diet and you go, why can't I lose a pound? The answer is, I've got to do without 3,500 calories. Or vice versa, if you're trying to put weight on, you have to find 3,500 more calories. So basically, if someone's lost 3 pounds or 5 pounds in a month, that's a phenomenal amount of calories. And you are really going to notice that that person is not eating virtually anything, okay? So one of the important things is it most likely may be that that resident is not well hydrated. So that's another trigger that you can look for, and that's those big weight drops, okay? So make sure that they're hydrated. And then let's look at what happens in the building. So when the trays come out, look at what's on the tray fluid-wise. At breakfast, you should see milk, you should see coffee or tea, you should see water, you should see juice, okay? So if you see a tray come down the hall and it only has a glass of juice, what are the chances that we're getting adequate fluid in that resident? And the answer is not good, okay? At lunch and supper, you should see 2 glasses of at least 8 ounces on that tray. You should see a glass of water and whatever else they choose to drink. So basically, if you're walking down the hall and the trays are getting ready to pass out, and you see those dinky little 4-ounce glasses, and unfortunately, what I've seen in a lot of building is those dinky 4-ounce glasses belong to the people that are on thickened liquids. Whoops. Okay. So here's the people that have limited swallowing facilities, and we've already given them a lot less to drink. So that's one thing you can do when you just spot the trays and go, whoops, something's happening in dietary. Where is my 16 ounces at lunch? Where is it in supper? If your dining room is back open, is there water? Is there water served to everyone? So look for the water and make sure that's it. The next thing is the hydration pass. Oh, okay. Are they happening in your facilities? When you're short nurse aides, is that something that is going down the tubes we're not having time to do? Okay. Make sure that the hydration pass is happening, especially to those residents who cannot self-hydrate. Okay. When you go in a room, lift a water pitcher. You're going in the room to do a treatment, pick up the water pitcher. Did it get filled 3.5 hours ago and it's still filled to the brim? Maybe we do have a problem with hydration, okay? So hydration is one of the things that we need to think about when we're doing hydration, when we're doing skin. Anybody have any questions on hydration? Okay.
I always say that I think that that's a really important thing that we overlook a lot, that it really makes, like you said, our residents more prone to break down, but how important it is. So no questions? I'm looking in the chat.
Still 16, which I think is where we started. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So now the next thing is, let's take a look at what you're already giving the resident. Okay. We look at the diet. Okay. And then we see a resident see what they have in the form of supplements or vitamins or minerals or iron or whatever. Okay. The first thing I want us to look at is the diet order and any supplements. Okay. Now, the first thing is, just because there's an order for it, does that mean it's really happening? Number one, all supplements and things that you're using for supplements should be coded as supplements, because the standard is you need to know whether that supplement is being taken and how much of it is being taken. So all of you are nurses, so you know that, or some of you may be therapy people, I'm sorry, forgot. But if you wanted to give someone insulin, you needed to know what their blood sugar is now, okay? You don't want to give someone insulin. Well, the dietitian is in the same boat that you are, okay? That dietitian first has to know how many calories and how much that resident is intaking, so they can compare it to how much they actually need, and then they can make a proper recommendation for that resident, okay? So look at the order, see what's there, okay? If it's not in the supplement column and on your Mars and it's not having to be coded by percentage, you need to make sure that that is changed, okay? Number two, make sure that supplement's coming out. Is it on the diet card? We're going to talk in a little about what you should do calorically, because calories are very important for keeping skin healed, healing skin, because if you don't get the calories right, what's going to happen with your protein? The answer is you're going to burn it for energy, okay? Your body wants its heart to work, its lungs to work, its brain to work, and it wants it to work more than it wants to heal your buttocks, okay? So basically you need those calories, and you're gonna need to spare that protein, okay? So basically, is that supplement coming out? Then look at the percentages. If all you have is refuse, or 10% or 50%, then we're missing the 8 ball, okay? Then we need to think, something is happening here. So make sure that it's being given, make sure that it's documented percentage-wise, and make sure if the resident is sick of it, not liking it, or whatever, that you tell that dietitian so that we can make a change, okay? So Then meal intake, okay? We talked about hydration, but also meal intake affects hydration. For example, think about, say, instant mashed potatoes. What are those? Potatoes minus the water, okay? So when you eat, a high percentage of your fluid intake is actually in the food you eat. So if you eat poorly, guess what? Your fluid intake is down, all right? So make sure that the documentation for the meal intake is accurate and complete, because again, that's a tool that the dietitian needs to make sure that they can estimate how many calories that resident is intaking and how much protein, et cetera, okay? All right, the next thing is weight loss. We need those calories, right? So somebody who's losing weight is probably not going to heal very well with you. Yeah, you may heal a small stage 2, but you're not going to heal a big wound because obviously they don't even have enough calories to hold on to the wound, okay? So to hold on to their weight. So one of the first things that you need to do is make sure that everything is being documented, okay? Now, let's say a resident is losing weight or we want to increase the calories. How do we do that? Well, the first thing is, if a resident is eating well, like 90 to 100%, give them some more, okay? It's better to fill them up at meals. It's a time that you're monitoring. It's a time that you're looking at them. It's a time they want to eat. So if they're eating well, a good thing to do is to enlarge the portions, okay? However, that is not a good solution if when you look at the meal intake, it's 75%. I don't know how many residents I look at and they are on double eggs, double meat, and they're eating 50%. Think they're getting anything out of that double meat, double eggs? No, okay. It's a recommendation that the dietitian made probably, but most likely didn't have the right data so that she could make that recommendation and say, yeah, this resident's eating 100%, so I can do large portions, okay? So that's one of the first things, get the large portions. The next thing is, maybe that person doesn't eat well, but maybe we can increase the calories of what they are eating. For example, we have enhanced cereal and we have a diet that's called enhanced. Enhanced is a super cereal, and basically it takes a bowl of oatmeal, which has about 90 calories, and it turns it into almost 400 calories and 9 grams of protein, okay? So when that resident finishes their little bowl of oatmeal, they got 4 times the calories that they normally would have in a bowl of cereal, and they got more protein than they normally would, okay? So that's a great thing. So it's sweet, it's mapley, when you look at it, it should be creamy looking and it should be brown tinged because it has brown sugar in it, okay? It tastes great. In fact, it's kind of like eating, ever taken a spoonful of sweetened condensed milk, you know, a little addicting. Well, this cereal's pretty addicting too. However, guess what? If they ate cornflakes, enhanced cereal isn't going to get you anywhere, okay? The same, our enhanced diet also includes whole milk 3 times a day. So whole milk has 240 calories, skim has about 90, okay? So we wanna make sure that that milk has all of those calories. The protein's the same, whether it be skim or whole, so you need those calories for the wound healing. So if you have a bird eater and they eat cereal, one of the good things that we can do is put them on an enhanced diet with super cereal and milk 3 times a day. Again, only works if they eat cereal and drink milk, okay? The next one is we go to the supplements. Now let's take a look at the supplements, okay? Number 1, if you get a supplement You eat breakfast, somebody asks you a supplement, and let's say you're running a little late. Instead of 10 o'clock, you get that puppy at 11:30, and here comes the trays. Are they going to eat lunch? No. Okay, so the first supplement, when you start off with one supplement, should be at the end of the day. Okay, it should be the HS snack. It's not going to prevent them from eating the next meal, because if the supplement prevents them from eating the next meal, then you haven't gained anything at all. So now the answer is, does it have to be a supplement? Can it be dessert? The answer is, to most dietitians, is how much protein do I need? If I just needed calories, heck, send them cookies, send them cakes, send them stuff that they really like, okay? It's a good way to increase the calories at meals. If they get a tray and all they're eating is dessert, give them 2 desserts. To heck with double meat, give them 2 desserts, give them what they're eating, okay? If they're diabetic, blood sugar, you can control the blood sugar with medication. There is no magic pill for calories, okay? So when you're doing it, always start with either the snack or the supplement in the evening. The next one is 2 o'clock, because, or that mid-afternoon, because there's more time between the noon meal and the supper meal. Most always there's at least 4 hours, sometimes 5 hours between that meal. So it's more logical to do that afternoon. And then if you need a third one, then you most likely will have to do that 10 o'clock one. Now, should you give them at meals? No. If you give somebody an ice cream like a magic cup, are they going to eat that plus the meal? The answer is, if they're not eating well, no, they're not, okay? So supplements with a meal should be a last resort. Sometimes dietitians use it if their meal intake is very poor, period, and you need it. But also keep in mind, do they really dislike the food, or are you filling them up with supplements in between the meals so much that basically they're not hungry? For example, you eat breakfast, you feed them at 10 o'clock, and now they eat lunch. Now at 2 o'clock, the supplements come around, but they didn't eat lunch, so they're hungry, so they eat their supplement. But now here comes supper, but now I'm full of supplement, so I don't eat supper. So what's the conclusion that 80% of the people feel? Oh, they don't like the meal, so we're just sending them supplement. No. It may be, but it also may be that we filled them up with supplements, and so they weren't hungry at meal times. So the important thing is to get maximum calories in those supplements. So Ensure has 240 calories in 8 ounces. So a 4-ounce Ensure is 120 calories. A Magic Cup or our house supplement is 300 calories, okay? Half of an Ensure basically has 4.5 grams of protein. 4 ounces of our house supplement and our Magic Cups have 9 ounces of protein, okay? What makes sense, Ensure or our house supplements and Magic Cups? House supplements and Magic Cups, because you want to spoil the meals less. The last one is the HS snack, the Med Pass. The Med Pass is also about 250 calories and 10 grams of protein. So that's also a very good choice. The other thing is the nurse is usually there. So you don't run the risk of having a really bad day and the supplements don't get passed out, et cetera. The nurse is already there, so it's very easy to do. Just make sure that that supplement is not being given at a Med Pass that's right on top of a meal, or you will have that problem with not having it, okay? So once you do the hierarchy, now you have at least offered enough calories. So make sure that the documentation is tight so that we're actually giving the dietitian the right pieces in order to make a recommendation that is accurate for that resident, okay? The next thing is, last but not least, should be the modulars, and that's the ProMods, et cetera, okay? we talked about how many calories. Well, ProMod has about 100 calories, okay? So 10 grams of protein and 100 calories. Is that better than a Magic Cup, which has 9 grams of protein and 300 calories? Again, depending on whether that resident eats well and how well they do, okay? So ProMod may not be the answer for residents to increase protein. You may do much better with a house supplement, okay? Let's say the other thing that a dietitian needs is they need to know where the resident is at nutritionally. Anybody tell me how you know, how that dietitian can tell where that person is nutritionally? What would you do? Anybody?
Lab work,
Labs.
lab, pre-albumin.
Absolutely, absolutely. The lab will tell you multiple things, okay? It will tell you hydration, be careful. Do you know the difference between dehydration and renal failure? In renal failure, not only the BUN goes up, but the creatinine also goes up. So the ratio between the BUN and the creatinine stays virtually the same. In dehydration, the BUN will go up, but the creatinine will stay the same. So there is a gap in the difference between the BUN and creatinine, and anything over in that 30 range is considered dehydrated. Okay, so that's one of the things you can use. So you can even start off with your lab value with the BMP to find out if they're hydrated or not. Okay, because again, dehydrated people don't eat very well, right? Okay. The last one is, someone mentioned a prealbumin. That's absolutely right. The albumin is affected by many things. Negative conditions, cancer, all kinds of health conditions will affect an albumin. Prealbumin also has some that are affected, but it still gives you a benchmark of where to start. However, also remember that you should also run a prealbumin with a minimum of a BMP, because prealbumin will go up in dehydration. So therefore, it can lull you into thinking that you have adequate protein stores when what you have instead is dehydration. So make sure that when you run the prealbumin, that you're running the BMP and minimum of a BMP. And that will tell you whether they're hydrated and give you a much better baseline for that prealbumin, okay? So let's look at a couple of more things on the process, okay? It takes more calories and it takes more protein to heal, correct? So therefore, if it takes more calories and more protein, one of the most important things is to make sure we get a jump start on what's happening, but on telling that dietitian that we need we need her to come in and treat, okay? So basically, we need to make sure that
I can't hear you, Penny.
Just a second. I think I muted her accidentally. I was
Okay.
trying to mute somebody else. Ah.
there we go.
Okay.
I'm back. Okay, guys. So basically, the best thing you can do is make sure you get to that dietitian, guys. Let's say a resident was holding weight and all of a sudden you have an unstageable wound and it requires about 500 extra calories a day. Guess what? In a week, you've gotten to your 3,500 calories, and guess what? You've lost at least a pound, right? So it's important that you get to them. And besides losing weight, you've eaten up some of the protein stores that resident had, okay? So the important thing is to get to the dietitian. Now, we do not have a policy for who calls that dietitian. So find out in your facility, how do you get to that dietitian when you have a new admit and they have a wound problem, etc. Believe me, she has multiple facilities. She's not going to look at your building's wound report every day and go, oh, I need to do so-and-so. It ain't going to happen, okay? So that you have a tight procedure for who is going to tell that dietitian that we have a problem. We have a new person with a skin problem, okay? Or we have a resident who has a new skin problem, okay? That's your best bet, to get them to it as soon as possible. The second thing is, because it most likely will happen when it's not a regular visit, who's going to handle that recommendation? How is that recommendation going to happen? I strongly recommend that she sends that recommendation to you just like she sends the other one, even if it's just one person, that she sends a single report with one person on it and what to do. And whoever then can handle it, especially in the small facilities where you may be only getting 1 day dietitian a month. It's very important that you get to her, okay? So, and very important that those recommendations don't sit there, okay? So let's go back to what do we do when we get a skin report as far as adding minerals, adding supplements, etc. Okay. To me, it's always safe to add a multiple vitamin. Okay. Everything else is going to depend on the resident. And do we have a set policy? And the answer is no. Okay. We all know that even if you have a twin and you have the same height, the same weight, the same age, if you eat the same, one of you may gain weight and the other one is not going to, or the other one will lose weight, etc. Okay, those are ballpark figures to start with. Okay, so that basically it's a guess to start with. So some of the things that we can do, if you're comfortable with them, I let the dietitians decide whether they're comfortable, whether they want to do zinc, whether they want to do vitamin C, whether they want to do E, okay? The same with your wound doctors. They all have articles that they have read. I can tell you though, that each of the minerals and the vitamins have a specific thing that they do. So you can give somebody zinc, but if all you're doing at that point is debriding, zinc is not needed. Zinc is helping lay down the matrix for skin regeneration. And when you're in a debriding phase, why give them zinc? It's not needed yet, okay? So that's one of the reasons why we don't have, okay? There are standards for practice as long as the dietitians follow standards of practice. I think that's adequate, okay? The same with the protein. There are negative factors for adding protein for people with renal problems. You should never exceed 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. It causes dehydration, a different type than the loss of water, but it does cause dehydration. So therefore, when you take a person that only weighs 100 pounds and isn't even 50 kilograms, it doesn't take you very long to get to double that protein level, okay? So the dietitian will look at all of those things, etc. Okay, and so that's why we basically don't have a problem, and we don't do it. Iron is another thing. Anemias have multiple different causes. Only part of them are helped with iron. So I strongly suggest that when you see a low H and H, that you run the tests to determine what type of anemia you have. That's you run a TIBC, a total iron, and anyway, so that you know whether it's nutritional, you know whether what it is, okay? And the same, the lab values will tell you whether you have a B12 deficiency or another one, okay? So if you're good at that kind of thing, if lab's your thing, I noticed somebody, Miss Hood knew immediately that the dietitian needed lab. So that's probably a person that's very good at lab. So the extras won't help. I think if you have a wound stuck in a certain plateau and they're not losing weight and you think the calories are normal, adding a supplement might be the vitamins and minerals might be a jump start, okay? But I do leave it up to the dietitian, etc. Okay, as far as the actual policy. So that was kind of nutrition in a fast pace. Do any of you have any questions or what you should be looking for in your facility? I think the key thing is making sure the dietitian knows, making sure that you give her the proper information. It's important to know that meal intake is done. If I could say very quickly, the documentation of meal intake. Look at how you set it up in your facility if you're a DON, because a lot of times at mealtime, that's the time that the aides may not actually be working with the residents that they're going to document meal intake. For example, I mean, if you're in charge of the people that need assistance on your hall and half of your residents are eating in the dining room, how do you know what they ate? Do you have that problem in your facility? I always hate it when I see an aide standing at a kiosk, and they don't do that anymore, so I can't see them, but punching in everybody's meal intake at the same time. I'm sorry, there's no way you can remember 10 people's meal intake. Sorry, you're not going to be right. You're going to get generally right, but it's really tricky, especially if they're not in the area that you're working on, okay? So think about those things. Think about your hydration program. What are you doing? Look at the weight. If you're not making any progress with the skin, look at the weight. If they are losing weight, you got a problem, okay? You've got to get more calories in them. As Trish loves it when I say, let them eat cake, whatever it is they like, go for it, okay? The same thing about fluids. Make sure that everybody has fluids in their room, one they like. If somebody's on a thickened liquid, make sure that they have thickened liquids at their bedside. You can use either one of two ways. That is, you can have a cooler with the thickened liquids in there on ice, or some facilities have smaller mugs, and when they fill up the ice, they grab a new mug and they fill them with the cold thickened liquid. They leave it bedside, and then when the next person passes out ice and liquid, they pick up that mug and give them a new mug. So the mug is changed out every 8 months. That's got an advantage, you know, because it keeps it cold and it's not floating around in water, etc. Okay. Remember that the hydration, when you do have a thickened liquid, doesn't mean on a hydration pass, you just throw it into the cooler. That's not hydrating. You got that cooler is for in between, okay? In your facility, you should have a sticker. You should have a 10 to an HS, a minimum of 4 ounces sent out by dietary for all of your thickened liquids. The reason why I label them is, let's say you have 3 nectars and 2 honeys. So at the end of the snack pass, you have 1 honey left over. How do you know who it belongs to? If it's got a label, you know who did not get offered a fluid, okay? So that's one of the things that I require the dietary manager to do, is that make sure that they have a snack label for those residents who need thickened liquid hydration, okay? If that's not happening in your facility, flip me an email. We've done quite a few changes in dietary managers lately, and we also have some new ones, and it could be something that went through the cracks. So if you need any help in that respect, just please, holler at me and I'll be glad to help. So other than that.
Well, thank you, Penny. Any questions for her specifically before we wrap this whole thing up?
I guess I should have mentioned that you also need to keep the blood sugar within reason. Anybody with a blood sugar higher than 185, good luck healing, especially in an extremity. The reduction that you're going to get in the circulatory factor is going to impede healing, et cetera. So in your diabetics, even though you need calories, remember, when you increase calories, you also need to increase medication, and a lot of times. And some of the people who are not as well educated as other, they start a supplement and they go, oh, I stopped it because their blood sugar went up. Oh, no. The answer is no, call the physician and get enough medication to handle the supplement. Don't just decrease the supplement. The supplement is needed for your wound healing. So make sure that that's happening. Okay?
All right. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Reminder to fill out the sheets. I'm going to show you one last time where to find them if you haven't already printed them out. You go to policies and procedures in the hub. You go to clinical. Are you guys seeing my screen? Yeah. You go to clinical essentials. You go to tab 8, skin and wound care. You go to the binder contents. You go to tab 1, orientation. And you go to this first Nexion skin and wound care new treatment nurse and admin checklist. And that's what we've gone over. So at this point, you should have the whole thing initialed, yourself and your supervisor. And again, I'm going to save the chat like I've done every week and send that out along with the Zoom attendance list as well. Any questions before we go? I thank you all for your participation. It's been great. Again, we'll send the link out to this one if any of your employees missed this session. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording.
Thanks, everybody.